Thank you for joining us online at Crossroads Community Church. We hope you enjoy this sermon from our most recent service, but we'd love for you to join us in person at Crossroads. We invite you to attend one of our services next weekend. We meet on Saturday nights at 6:30 p.m. and Sunday mornings at 9:30 and 11 a.m. If you would like to join our mission to connect people with God, visit us at www.crossroads.cc, where you can make a one-time donation or set up a recurring donation to support what God is doing at Crossroads. Enjoy the service.
I should invite him to church. I mean, what could happen?
Yeah, let's go to church. I'm Jewish. What are you saying? What's wrong with me? Yeah. Just yesterday I was thinking I wanted to get up really early in the morning, go hear stories about old dead guys. Dude, let's do it. Let's knock it out. Yeah, totally. Let me check my calendar and make sure I'm clear for that. Delete? Yeah, dude, let's go to church. Let's party it up at church. What? What?
I should invite him to church. I mean, what could happen? Hey, you want to check out church with me on Sunday?
Cool.
What's the worst that could happen, right? So invite somebody with you. As you know, we are having our grand opening on Easter morning. We'll have two services, 9 and 11 o'clock. So think about who you can invite. We're trying to make it easy for you. So we put some selfie stickers on the wall here. There's one here, and then there's one in the back. We want you to take a selfie, and that's a way for you to kind of put it on Facebook or other social media places to say, hey, join me. I'd love for you to come worship with me at Crossroads. So before you leave, you guys know how to take selfies, right? Or take a Ussie or whatever you got to take, but take a picture before you go and invite somebody with you. Also, we'll be celebrating baptism on Easter morning, so if you haven't taken that step yet, what a great way to celebrate Easter. I was baptized on Easter morning myself as an 8-year-old, and so what a great day. So if you haven't taken that step yet, and God's calling you to, come on, get baptized with us on Easter. You can fill out, there's a connection card there. You can just check on their baptism and be baptized with us that day. If we give you a call because you checked baptism, answer your phone, then we can talk to you about it. Hey, or call us back, But anyway, or you could talk to us this morning too. We'd like to get you set up for that. Also, just kind of thinking about Easter as well, you see on there the Thursday there's a Thursday thing, it's in your bulletin too, that says 6:30. It's called The Invitation. That's a prayer and worship experience that we're going to be doing, and we'd love for all of you to come be a part of that with us. We're going to be praying and preparing our heart for Easter. It'll be interactive in a way that will kind of walk you through some things here on this side of the building, and then our hope is to be able to actually go over into the new part of the building and pray and worship together as we prepare our hearts for Easter, but also to prepare ourselves to remember and to know that what we're building here is just a tool to be used by God. The celebration of Easter, the grand opening, yeah, we're celebrating the grand opening, but it's a trick. Because the grand opening is the grand opening of the tomb. So we want to celebrate and share that message with people over Easter. So come with us Thursday and pray and worship with us, and then be here Easter morning as well. If you're not on one of our teams, now's the time. We've been join the team for several weeks now. The Yankee Stadium board is in the hallway here on this first hallway as you go up this way, and just kind of check that out. If you're on a team with us, then physically take a pin out of there to say, hey, I'm not sitting in the stands. Take a pin out of the stands and then place it on whatever team you're on. And if you're not on a team yet, we need you. And we're in the 3rd round draft pick this weekend, so you're still up in the high draft. So fill out one of these. Let us know where you're interested in serving, and we'll get you hooked up this week. It's been really cool. New greeters today. We've seen some of you stepping out to help with parking, mentoring. It's been so cool to see so many of you kind of stepping up into these new places. So you can fill that out. We'll get in touch with you this week. Well, today we're starting a brand new series called Grand Opening. And again, I'm letting you in on a little secret. We're calling it Grand Opening because we're preparing to move into the worship center, but it's really It's a play on words because the grand opening is the grand opening of the tomb and what we're celebrating on Easter. We're preparing ourselves for that. And so today I want to start this series called Grand Opening, and I want to ask you a question as we start. Have you ever experienced a miracle? Just by show of hands, say, hey, yeah, I could tell you a story right now about a miracle that I've experienced. All right, cool. How many of you would raise your hand right now and say, I'm in need of one right now? Like, I need a miracle right now. How many of you would say that? Okay, good. We're going to pray with you and for you at the end of this message. What I hope that you'll understand during this series is that we serve a God where nothing is impossible. Jesus actually makes the impossible possible, and that's what I want you to know through this series. And when I ask you a question and say, hey, have you experienced a miracle? What I want you to know through this series is that I would say that you've probably never not experienced a miracle. And that's what I want you to see through this series. In fact, you woke up this morning and thought it was just a normal day, right? You got up, you came to, maybe you got up, had some breakfast this morning, had a cup of coffee, read the newspaper, watched something on TV for a few minutes, wrangled the kids together, everybody got here, drove up to the church, got here, you're here now. What are your plans for later? Maybe you're going to pick something up for lunch after this, watch something, maybe take a nap. Anybody got that on the agenda today? Take a nap. And then maybe have some dinner or something, and then, kind of chill out for a little bit, come back to youth tonight, or whatever the case might be. And then you're going to go to sleep, and then you're going to wake up tomorrow, the alarm's going to go off, and you're going to do it all again, right? You think, man, it's just an ordinary day. I want you to know that today is not an ordinary day. It's not an average, normal day. Actually, right now, you feel like you're sitting still, but it's only because of a miracle. Yeah, you're sitting still at this very moment, but the planet Earth is spinning on its axis at 1,040 miles per hour, and you're sitting still right now. I don't know if you've ever seen Jim Cantoris, like he always shows up wherever the worst weather is, right? Have you ever seen him like in the 70 or 80 mile an hour weather trying to hold on to something? It's kind of like the cartoons. They're holding on to the pole and the feet are out back, That's at like 70 or 80 miles an hour. The planet is rotating at 1,040 miles per hour. We're speeding through space right now at 67,108 miles per hour, which is faster than a speeding bullet, right? Actually, it's 87 times faster than the speed of sound. That's how fast we're moving right now. So at the end of this day, you might feel like, hey, I didn't do much today. I laid around and watched TV. I went to church this morning. I kind of chilled out for the rest of the day. You need to remind yourself, at the end of the day, when you say, I hadn't done much today, you actually traveled 1,599,793 miles through space. All right? Give yourself a hand. You've done some work today. Have you ever thought what would happen if for 1 second God took his hand off of the earth? At that rate of speed, if he took his hand off for just 1 second, you think you've had whiplash before. Everything would be wiped clean if he took his hand off for 1 second. I would suggest to you that you've never not experienced a miracle. When was the last time you said to God, God, I wasn't sure we'd make the full rotation again today, but you did it again. You see, God's so good at what he does that we take his miracles for granted. You know that? Now let me ask you again, have you ever experienced a miracle before? You've experienced one. Do you know that the adult heart beats 100,000 times a day, circulating 6 quarts of blood through 60,000 miles of veins? Messages from your brain travel to your body through the nerves at a speed of 248 miles per hour. Trillions of chemical reactions are taking place in your body every second, every minute, every hour of every day. You're inhaling oxygen at this moment. You're metabolizing energy. You're standing up straight or sitting down straight. That's pretty impressive considering that you have equilibrium when we're moving at the rate that we're moving. Your body is digesting the donut that you had for breakfast this morning. Any of you fighting off a cold right now? Raise your hand so we can stay away from you. Okay, so your natural antibodies are fighting off a cold right at this moment. You are a miracle. You are a miracle. And I don't say that to you to give praise to you, but to give praise to the God who created you. You are a miracle. You've never not experienced a a miracle. Did you ever think about the fact that you traveled in a vehicle today at the rate of maybe 55 or 60 miles per hour, let's just say a hunk of metal heading in one direction, and there's hunks of metal heading in the other direction at 50 or 60 miles per hour, and somebody in that traffic's probably texting, and you made it here safely today. You've never not experienced a miracle. And that's what this series is about, is, hey, we already believe God for the big miracles, right? Then why do we think the things in our life are impossible? With Him, nothing is impossible. In fact, when Jesus opened the grave, the word impossible was taken out of our vocabulary. Everything is possible for him who believes. So let me just caution you as we go into this series. This is not a series about miracles. It's a series about the miracle maker and the one who can perform them. And let's seek Jesus together through this series. He's the sight giver. He's the water walker. He's the grave opener. And today, He's the wine maker. The wine maker. Let's look at John chapter 2. I got to be careful not to step too far back on this thing, or I'm going to... How'd you like Crossroads Unplugged today? That was pretty cool, huh? We're going to be unplugged at least for another week here. We've already started kind of moving things over and getting ready. They're actually going to probably be laying carpet this week, so we had to get a lot of the stuff up for that. So anyway, Crossroads Unplugged. It was great. So we're talking about the winemaker today. In John chapter 2, let's read together these 11 verses. It says in the very beginning of this, and I think this is not a coincidence, it says, on the third day. Isn't that interesting? Did you know this is Jesus' first miracle? This is the first miracle. Isn't it interesting that it happened on the third day? When we know of his greatest miracle also happened on the what day? The third day. I don't think that there's any coincidence that the beginning started on the third day, and when he rose from the grave, it was on the third day. On the third day, this is the first miracle, it says a wedding took place. This is a big deal. A wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. We'll talk about that wedding in just a minute. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, wedding over, right? Wedding over. I've been to some weddings when it probably wouldn't have been a bad idea for the wine to end at some point. Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine. Woman, why do you involve me?" Don't take that as something negative there when Jesus says woman. You may have heard, the people twist that a bit and say, woman, make me some food, or you've probably heard people say those kinds of things. This is more of an endearing type of term here, like beloved or mom, maybe. Why do you involve me? Jesus replied, "My hour is not yet come." His mother said to his servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Yes, Mom, we will do what you say to do. You know the mom, like all the disciples are standing around, like this is Jesus' mom. So maybe she has a lot of influence on them, but she says, "Hey, you listen to what Jesus tells you." Okay, got it. Nearby stood 6 stone water jars. I'll probably say that wrong several times. 6 stone water jars, the kind used for the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim. And then he told them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet." They did so. And the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, "Everyone brings out the choice wine first." He's reminding them of the custom. Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. It's a pretty good strategy there. Like, give the good stuff at the beginning, and then give the cheaper stuff later when they won't recognize that it's cheaper alcohol. But you have saved, it says, saved the best till now. What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory. And then this phrase I think is so important, and his disciples, it says his disciples believed in him. So this is the very first miracle of Jesus. Interesting that we have a God who wants to keep the party going, don't we? And there's so many things that we could kind of pull out of this text. I think probably my favorite is that for 30 years of Jesus' life, he was God incognito. You talk about history's best kept secret. Like for 30 years, he had the power to do these miracles, but he held that in because it wasn't time yet to do it. I wondered how difficult that would be. Like, mom puts broccoli in front of him and he wants to transform it into like chocolate cake or something, like how, or to just freak his friends out or whatever the case might be. But he held all those things in. He didn't use or do any of those miracles. But now this all changes on this day when the creator of water turns that water into wine. The water atoms submit themselves to God's authority. He mutates, I hope you're getting this, like he mutates the molecular structure of water and turns it into wine, not just wine, but fine wine, the best wine they'd ever tasted, and not just little flasks of wine, gallons of wine. Well, there's 34 miracles of Jesus, and 7 of them are recorded here in the book of John, and this is the very first one. So let me kind of set up the scene. Jesus and his disciples are at a wedding. That's a big deal. You've been to some weddings, right? I've been to some Crossroads weddings, been to some other weddings. When I was a kid, I remember going to weddings, and a wedding meant you would give up like 2 hours of your day, basically. You got invited to a wedding, you showed up at the wedding, there was a ceremony, and then everybody walked across the parking lot to the fellowship hall, or they walked into the fellowship hall of the church, and you had ham biscuits and those green and white and yellow little mints, whatever they are, pink mints, and you had some cake and you had some punch, and that was it. Like, you still had time to cut the grass after you were done. Like, you had plenty of time to do what you needed to do. Now, today, weddings are quite different, right? You get invited to a wedding and you're like, well, there goes Saturday. Like, the whole Saturday is gone. If you're in the wedding, the whole weekend is gone, right? And so here's I think about some of the weddings now. Like, they have the wedding, and then they have the reception. And I don't know if you guys have picked up on this, but lately people have been doing the reception after the reception, where they invite people to the reception after the reception that the couple really wanted to invite to the wedding in the first place. But they had to invite all the other people, so they had that reception for all of them, and then the people that they really wanted at the wedding came to the reception after the reception. If you haven't been invited to the reception after the reception, you might not know the couple as well as you think you do. But anyway, it's an all-day event. Well, the weddings here during this time were even longer than that. You're talking more like a week-long event. The weddings would typically happen on Wednesdays. The groom and his friends and the groomsmen would actually walk to the bride's home the night before the wedding in the dark, and it would be like a torchlight procession as they would walk towards the bride's home. Then there would be a ceremony, and then there would be a banquet, and that banquet would last, the whole thing altogether would last somewhere around a week. Let me also mention to you that the groom himself would pay for the entire wedding. The groom, not the groom's family, the groom. Like, I have a daughter that's in high school. I think we ought to bring this back. I think this is a good idea. This is a good piece of culture here. Like, the groom paid for all of it. Why? Because he had to prove that he had the goods to take care of the girl. And so he would pay for the whole thing. And so here at this wedding, the wine is running out. Mary seems to be the wedding coordinator. You guys pick up on that? Like, she's not just there, but she's the wedding coordinator. She notices that the wine's running out, and she makes attention to it, says, hey, the wine's run out. It's a desperate situation. It's a desperate situation. Why don't you write that down? Because I think if you want to see a miracle, there has to be some type of problem, right? There has to be some type of desperate situation. We need God to supply here. We need God to fill what's empty here. We need God to heal what's broken here, to open what's closed here. Like, there has to be some type of desperate situation. The desperate situation here is that the wine ran out. And it might not seem like a big deal, but it is. It is. Only because of the embarrassment that could have come on the groom. Remember, the groom had to pay for it and show that he had the goods to take care of his new wife. And so this is more about, it's an embarrassing situation that's coming up here. Now, I don't think the guests really know what's going on yet, and so it's Mary kind of steps in right in time and says, hey, the wine is out. And here's an opportunity for Jesus to prove that he's bigger than the little things, too. Isn't it cool that this is more about, it's not about saving someone's life or healing somebody of some sickness. It's about saving face. That's what this miracle is about. I think that's pretty cool to me, that it's about saving face, because it shows me that God, He cares about the little details as much as he cares about the big things too. This is a big deal here because we know the wedding day is the day that the girl dreams of her entire life, right? I mean, like, what's the one day? What's the one day that you want everything to go right and nothing to go wrong? It's the wedding day. In fact, I often wonder why I volunteer to officiate weddings, because there's a lot of pressure. Like, I could, no matter what, you could, if you say the wrong thing or do something stupid, like, it's going to be on video and in their video mind forever. Like, forever. And here it is, it's about saving face. I want you to notice, too, as we go through this series, that the desperation, you say, hey, this is just about wine, but the desperation of the miracles that happen in the book of John, the desperation increases each time. Each time. Here it is, it's talking about wine, but how about later when it's a dad whose son is dying? And he runs, he travels a long way to find Jesus, and he meets Jesus and says, my son is dying, and Jesus says, he's healed right now. Like, go back home, he's healed. All the way from here. I healed him all the way from here to where he is. Like, go back home, he's healed. And remember, he runs back home, and the servants meet him halfway and say, your son's been healed. The intensity of the desperation continues to grow each single time. You think about the people that were hungry in front of Jesus, and all he had was 5 pieces of bread and 2 fish. The intensity increases each time. You think about the very end of it, where we talk about Jesus. Well, think about this, the miracle before, the biggest miracle Jesus ever did. It's a family who lost a loved one. Lazarus. And he's been dead for 4 days, And just the desperation increases. And then at the final, all of creation waits as Jesus has been crucified and placed in a grave, in a tomb. Like, what? The desperation's so high. Like, is he really Christ? Is he really going to rise from the dead? Is he who he says he is? Is it going to happen? And everybody waits in desperation. You see that intensity grows each and every time. Would you not agree with me that we live in a desperate day? And it's more desperate now than ever. Like, it's a desperate day. And I know because I know a lot of you. I don't know all of you, but I know a lot of you. And I know the desperation in your lives. I know the situations of your life. I read the text messages or the emails or the Facebook posts, of things going on in your life. It's been a lot of it this week. The desperation. And I know some of you have gone through some stuff, and you're waiting for Jesus to do something. I hear about the marriages that are struggling, the addictions to drugs or substances or pornography, or I hear about the relationship struggles, the job loss, the financial issues, the people that feel far from God. Like, I hear it, and all I can tell you is that when you have a need, and I hope that you hear this in this series, that when you have a need that the doctor can't meet, and you have a need that the education system can't meet, and you have a need that your friends can't meet, you have a God where everything is possible. Everything is possible. And I think that the idea here is, like, we either have to decide that everything's a miracle or nothing's a miracle. Like, you can say, hey, I've never experienced a miracle. Or you have to just say, hey, everything's a miracle, like medicine's a miracle. And doctors and nurses are miracles, and addiction centers are miracles. It's all miracles. But sometimes God goes, He's got all of these laws, He steps across those laws to do something incredible, like somebody has an MRI, a before and after MRI, and they're completely different. Sometimes He does that, and I've seen it. I've shared with you the story of my brother and the miracle of his life. Like, I've lived it. I've lived it. I have a brother that was pronounced dead on the scene, and he began to show life. And they flew him to MCV, and my dad calls me and says, you better come now if you need to come and say goodbye to your brother. And I drove to MCV to see him and to say goodbye. He was unrecognizable. He had a skull fracture that went from the front of his skull all the way to the back. And I I said my goodbyes to him. And the doctors told us, like, he's going to, if the swelling increases even a centimeter more, he's not going to make it. And we begged God and prayed, God, please, please. And every hour from that point on, we saw his swelling and his brain go down. Each and every hour. The doctors said to us, even about the skull fracture, they said, we've never seen anything like it. It was like the finger of God went like this on the skull fracture to go around every part of his brain that would have killed him instantaneously. We've lived the miracles. We've seen the miracles. We also believe that, and I remember begging and praying to God to heal my grandfather from his cancer. And our family like begging by his bed, God, please spare his life. And it wasn't until he died that I realized that it's all a miracle. And that he crossed over into a place where he no longer experiences that cancer, no longer experiences any sickness or any difficulty or any sorrow. Like he is healed. So it's either we've never experienced a miracle or all of it's a miracle. And I would suggest to you that it's all a miracle. We've never not experienced a miracle. All of it is. All of it is. And I know you have desperate situations in front of you. And what does God call us to do? Well, he calls us to unreasonable obedience. If you want to see God do something big in your life, then it will require of you to do something unreasonable. So Mary says to the disciples, do what Jesus says. Okay, we'll do it. Verse 7, Jesus says, go get the 6 stone jars and then fill them with water. I think my first reaction would have been, why? Like, we got plenty of water. We ran out of wine, not water. What's the deal with the water? It's unreasonable. It doesn't make sense. Go get those 6 stone jars and fill them up with water. Did you catch that those were jars that were used for ceremonial cleansing? That was part of the wedding as well. So they stuck their germ-infested hands in that water, or maybe wiped their body or their feet in some way into these jars. Like, this is unreasonable. Like, you want me to, and I'm sure some of the water was still in there, like, you want us to fill up those with water? And I love the language because I think it's specific to us. I think it's written intentionally. Like, they didn't just fill it, they filled it to the what? To the brim. They did the unreasonable thing. They did what was called of them. You know, I think sometimes God calls us to do the natural things so he can display his supernatural abilities. You think about other miracles like, hey guys, I know you just came in from fishing, and I know you've been fishing all night, and I know you got all your nets put away and all that kind of stuff, and I know you're supposed to fish at night, but hey, let's go out and let's cast out the nets one more time. Doesn't make sense. Think about him talking to the crippled man. What does he say to the crippled man? Pick up your mat. The mat that I'm sitting on, you mean? Like the one that I've been sitting on and laying on for all these years? You want me to just pick it up? Like, I can't pick it up, I'm sitting on it. Stand up and pick it up. It's unreasonable. Start serving the 5 pieces of bread and 2 fish to the crowd of 5,000 people. Just start serving. You mean like we're going to get as far as the second person before it's all gone? Start serving it. Unreasonable. So they start serving it and it multiplies and multiplies and multiplies. Go wash in the pool. Well, can't you just heal me right here? Go wash in the pool. To Lazarus' family, roll away the stone. He said, but he stinks, right? Remember they said? In fact, the King James Version says he stinketh. I think that's kind of cool. Stinketh. He's behind the tomb. He's been there for 4 days. He stinks. Roll it away. It makes no sense. Go fill the water pitchers, the ceremonial cleansing pitchers with water, and they filled it to the brim. And then it went a step further. Now go dip some of it out and go serve it to the master of the ceremonies. Are you kidding me? Can you just picture this? It's hilarious to me. Like, they scoop in there, like the germ-infested water jars. They get the water in the cup, and they're walking over to the master of the ceremonies. Drink this. Drink it. To me, it's funny. You got to read the humor into the word. It's the uncommon things that he calls us to do. It's that unreasonable obedience, but they did it. They did it. And I think sometimes we say, that's too hard, that's too sacrificial, I can't do that. And you know what? Every time we do that, we lose. But every time we act in obedience when he calls us to, we win. Let's just obey God and then let him calculate all the details. How about that? Let's do that. And I'm thankful for you guys because you're an unreasonable church, and I've called you to do a lot of unreasonable things in the last 4 years, and you do it. And I thank you for it. There's just something about that kind of faith. God blesses it. When you do the unreasonable things, He blesses it. Let's third remember that in this text, we need to remember that Jesus makes the impossible possible. And I know that that's where what I hope you get more than anything. Like He makes the impossible possible. And He takes water, H2O, the most basic chemical compound on earth. 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen, the most basic compound, and yet the most vital, right? 71% of our planet's covered in water. 65% of your body is water. Water's flavorless, but yet, how can something so flavorless taste so good? It tastes so good, especially on a hot day. Like you've been on a hot day working in the yard or something, man. Nothing tastes better than water at all. It's needed for growth. It puts out fires. It's what we swim in, you know. I mean, it's water. It's the raw material for this very first miracle that Jesus did. I think it's a good reminder for us that God doesn't need much to work with. In fact, He doesn't really need anything at all. And He does in 3 seconds what should take 3 years to do. Like, I guess He could have started with grapes and it would have still been a pretty cool miracle, right? He could have expedited the fermentation process and it still would have been a pretty cool miracle. But He starts with water, the simplest element on earth, and He turns it into something beautiful. Wine, not just wine, but fine wine. Jesus turns water into wine. If I did my math right, not just 1 bottle, but 757 bottles. A whole vineyard worth of wine. It takes 2.5 pounds of wine, of grapes to make 1 bottle of wine. This would have taken, and I'm not just saying a ton in a slang way, like it would have taken a ton of wine, a ton of grapes to make that much wine. How can you take H2O and turn it into C2H5O8? How can you do that? And even just saying that simplifies it, you know, because there's at least 100 other chemical reactions that had to have happened with equations as long as this room. And yet He does it in 3 seconds. What does this say to us? Well, I think it says to us that we serve a God who knows when we run out, and He's willing to fill us up. And some of you are empty. I know some of you are empty. You've run out of money, run out of strength, run out of friends, run out of hope. This says to us that He's not just a God that turns water into wine. He turns fear into faith. He can turn anxiety into trust. He can turn depression into hope. In fact, what I would say to you is that He can turn anything into anything. That's the God that we serve. Everything was created by Him and for Him. He's kind of like saying, hey, watch this. I want you to see my mastery on a molecular level. Watch what I do. And I think if we could just catch a glimpse of His creative authority, I think we would see that things around us aren't impossible. He can do anything. He could do anything. Every atom is subject to His authority because He created it. He could do anything. But here's the key, the last thing. Here's the key. We need to keep our eyes on the miracle maker. I love how it all ends. There's certainly a temptation in our life to focus on miracles. And again, I want us not to. This is not a series about miracles. It's a series about the miracle maker. And as it ends, the disciples walk over to what they think is germ-infested water, and they take it out of the ceremonial jars. They walk over and they hand it to the master of the ceremony, who does whatever you do when you drink wine. He probably swished it and smelled it and all that, whatever you do there. And he takes the sip, and I just imagine him kind of giving the approving nod, to them, like, that's good wine right there. That's the best wine I've ever had. And then he reminds them of that custom. Who does this? Like, who saves the best wine for last? Like, everybody gives the best wine up front and then the worst wine a little bit later. And yet you've saved the best for last. But he did much more than that. He saved the face of the groom. He saved the face of the groom. What could have been shame for him turned into fame. Hey, check out that groom, man. Look at him. Like he's got the best wine at the end of this thing, man. I got thinking this week about like some of the pictures that I have of Jesus in my mind. Like what are some, think about some of the pictures you have of Jesus. I think about this picture that was in my room growing up, and it was probably 30 or 40 years old when it was in my room. It was a little brown picture about this big, and it was of Jesus standing at a door knocking. You ever see that? The Bible tells us that Jesus stands at the door knocking. He's probably standing at the door knocking on some of your hearts right now, saying, "Hey, let me in to your life. Let me in." That's a picture that I have of Jesus. Another picture is, I don't know if Heaven and Earth still exists. It was a Christian bookstore. I don't even know if it still exists, but there was a picture in there that had it had Jesus standing there, and he had a lamb wrapped around his neck, and he was holding it like that. And I bought that picture and gave it to my grandparents, and they kept it in their home for as long as I can remember. That's another picture that I have. Jesus is the Lamb of God. Probably a picture that you all have or in your mind is Jesus on the cross. Like that's a picture that we imagine. My wife always says that she imagines sitting in the lap of Jesus. This is kind of her picture, like sitting in the lap of Jesus, that he's like a father and she just sits in his lap. Like those are pictures that we have. But I often wonder if we had the picture of his power in our mind. That he's seated right now. He's sitting right now on the right hand of the Father. Like he's got that power. The Bible tells us that at the name of Jesus, every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Do we have that picture of his power? Of his power. He has that kind of power. He has that kind of authority. And he is a God who can make the impossible possible. He just is. And I know there are things over your head right now, because they're in my life like that too. Like they're way over my head. But guess whose feet they're under? They're under his feet. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. So let's not seek miracles. Let's seek Jesus, the miracle maker. Keep your eyes on him. Think about what he's capable of doing. Again, it's either I've never seen a miracle or it's all a miracle. And the greatest miracle is when our loving God gave his son Jesus Christ to die on the cross for us, and then he came out of that tomb. It's the greatest miracle ever. It was the grand opening. That's the grand opening. So that we can have his inheritance, so that we can have every spiritual blessing. It's all there for us. It's that kind of power. And I think if we could understand just a fraction of that, it would change us forever. If we would recognize that for every problem we have, he has 10,000 solutions. Let's seek the miracle maker. Verse 11 tells us that when this happened, it says that they believed in him. And my hope and my prayer all week has been that God would reveal his glory through this series or even today, and that you would say and recognize the miracles that are in play around you already and say, I believe in him. The fact that you're sitting here when we're spinning that fast and moving that fast, it's a miracle. You're a miracle. And my prayer's been that you would recognize that today, and that you, just like the disciples, would believe. Let's pray together. God, we thank you, and we know that that you spoke the whole universe into existence. And God, that you could take water and turn it into wine, that shows us that you can take the broken places of our life and bring wholeness. God, that nothing's impossible for you, that you can open anything, you can change anything, you can do anything. And God, would you stretch our faith? God, stretch our faith. Would you forgive us for believing what we can do in our own strength and then calling it faith, God? God, help us to believe that nothing is impossible with you. And just as the disciples saw this miracle with their own eyes, that they believed in you at that moment, God, in the same way, would you show your glory to all of us, that we would see the miracles that are in play all around us every single day, at every moment of every day, and that we too would believe in you. Open our eyes to see who you really are. And if that's you, and you haven't given your life to Christ, but today you recognized He He revealed himself to you in some way today, and you said, hey, I see the miracles that have gone on all around me, that are in play every single moment. And today I believe, like if that's you, then would you just pray these words with me? Just say, I believe in you. I give my life to you. Thank you for showing yourself to me today, revealing your glory to me. Thank you for the miracles that are going on all around me. I believe in you. And I give myself to you today. Just tell him, say, I give myself to you today. And if that's you, and you prayed that prayer, would you just take a second and get that connection card and just write your name on there and just let us know that you prayed with me today, and let us contact you and help you with next steps. Take that card and put it in the box as you go. How many of you with your eyes closed would say, I need a miracle today, like something in my life? And by raising your hand would say, something needs to be filled, something needs to be opened. It could be financial, it could be a friend or family member that needs their eyes opened to who Jesus is. You need hope, that you need joy. There's a desperate situation. I just want to pray for you. God, we already believe. We already believe in you for the big things, God. Would you help us to believe you in these little things as well? God, we're desperate. God, would you call us to unreasonable obedience, God? We'll do it. Whatever you ask us to do, we'll do it. Just tell him as you're praying. If you raise your hand, just say, hey, I'll do it. I'll do it. God, we believe that you can make the impossible possible, that you can turn anything into anything, God. And so we put our eyes on you today. We seek you, Jesus, the miracle maker. We seek you and we love you. And we trust you. And we know that all of this is under your authority, and you can do whatever you want to do. And we trust you either way. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.